Hello dear viewers and welcome back to the ancient dwarven hold of our ancestors. Today we'll be discussing the Iron Oath. The Iron Oath is a turn-based tactical role-playing game developed by Curious Panda Games, published by Humble Games, and was released on the 3rd of November 2023. We recently hit 500 subscribers, which is fantastic news everyone, and I really appreciate every person that interacts with my channel, and I thank you for subscribing, watching, liking and commenting on my videos. So, the Iron Oath. This is an interesting one. I didn't actually myself purchase this game for the Ancient Library, but rather it was a gift from a good friend on my birthday, and I'm glad I received it. In the Iron Oath, you take on the role of a leader of a band of mercenaries in the fantasy world of Calum. You must build up your party by hiring recruits, customizing them to your needs and wants, and taking on the contracts to aid the people of the land. You will manage equipment and skills of your men and women as you seek to increase the renown of your company and help to defend against overally. The Iron Oath is a pixel art game with each character represented wonderfully as a sprite on the screen that has been hand-drawn with care. Growing up in the time before, two-dimensional graphics was what we had, so I do appreciate the style. Beyond the nostalgia of it though, pixel art is very much its own thing, with beauty and character aplenty, rather than simply a throwback to another time. The backgrounds for your battles and dungeoneering, along with the overworld map, look thematic to the fantasy vibe and richly drawn. The world of Calum is brought to life nicely with numerous scenes of forests, dungeons, castles and towns that your company shall traverse throughout the game. One thing I would say is that the items and armour that you will equip your men and women with sadly don't appear on the characters in game. How they are drawn is how they are drawn, with no way to exactly know what your character has without delving into the inventory menu. Besides the characters of your company, which are sadly all human and not heroic dwarves, there are all sorts of baddies and beasties that you will encounter. These range from strange void spawn to undead, rival companies and all sorts. They are all lovingly brought to life and menacingly so. The soundscape of the Iron Oath is capable, with the various sounds of weapons swinging and landing upon flesh and steel being both satisfying and provides good feedback to your actions. Special skills by your men and women have some nice flourishes of pixel graphics that adds to the atmosphere and look cool. There is quite a lot of dialogue in the game, with a strong narrative driving you onwards, but none of it is voiced, rather all appearing in text form. This is fine, and although I would be nice to have full voices below the words from your company, I imagine that would have been quite the expense that perhaps a small studio could do without. Like Battle Brothers, there is an Iron Mode setting which allows only one save, but as the game doesn't explicitly say it's the best way to play, I decided to play with it off. A little less anxiety for this old dwarf that way. You begin the game as a full company, with mighty chests of gold and loot and everything seemingly going your way. Sadly, after celebrating with your company and saying goodbye to an old friend as they settle for a retirement, you are set upon by villains who kill several people and steal all of your possessions, leaving you with nearly nothing and good friends left to bury. It is from here that our journey begins. You must see about rebuilding your mercenary company by hiring on new, skilled warriors before outfitting them with what you can and taking on contracts from surrounding towns. By doing this, you can bring yourself back to full strength and hopefully avenge yourselves upon those who have wronged you. Your company is made up of all the warriors that are currently under contract with you. This starts out as a maximum of 7, but it can be increased over the course of the game. Each individual will have a class which denotes what sort of skills they can use. The Guardian, for example, is a paladin style character with sword and shield and healing powers, as well as holy attacks to smite thy foe. There are several different classes, from the aforementioned Guardian to Stormcaller to Valkyrie, Bard and others. It is a wise leader indeed who employs the services of an eclectic bunch of recruits, the better to create a well-rounded troop that can overcome any challenge. The main game loop of the Iron Oath revolves around hiring, outfitting and upgrading the members of your group, while taking on contracts to rid the land of evil, protect caravans and clear out abandoned crypts and caves and such. This core gameplay pattern is both fun to play and rewarding, says this here old dwarf. You will move through an overworld map of the land of Calum, travelling to cities and picking up contracts. Moving from location to location will take a number of days. When you enter a city, there are several options available to you. You can visit an inn where you take a hard-earned rest, buy a round of drinks for your group, and recruit new members. It is wise to rest when you can so that your warriors do not become exhausted and less able in combat. Besides the inn is the infirmary, where should anyone acquire an injury, and they will, dear viewers, you could admit them to become healed. Depending on the sort of injury incurred, your man or woman will be out of action for a certain number of days. Luckily, when they are all better, they will immediately rejoin your company, even if you are not in the city where they were healed. This is really good as you don't need to remember where you placed someone and have to traipse back to get them. There is a marketplace too, where you can of course buy and sell items. This is a useful way to acquire new equipment for your company, as well as selling off any excess items you no longer need, though it is a good idea to hold on to certain items should you wish to outfit new members down the line. Each city will have an associated reputation which you can increase by taking on contracts. Most towns and cities will have contracts available. Each contract will have a description on what you are to do along with how difficult it will be, denoted by a number of white skulls. It will also tell you what your reward will be for fulfilling the contract. Contracts can vary in their difficulty and what they might involve. One might see you escorting a trade caravan, fending off bandits and beasts and such, while another might have you descend into a crypt to clear it of ancient evils. Whenever you do delve into some sort of dungeon, you will have the opportunity to form a 5-person party that will venture forth. The 5 people selected will be the only members of your company that will enter. The dungeon must be completed by this group and no other, so it is a good idea to field a well-rounded group from what you have available. Once your party ventures forth, you enter the dungeon screen. The dungeon is denoted by a series of linked squares that you must traverse. You move your party along the squares and interact with any event you might come across. This event could well be a combat one, where you must fight some monsters or something, but it could also be that you found a chest with some loot in it, or some sort of trap that you'll have to deal with. This part of the game is reminiscent of Darkest Dungeon, which I think followers of that game would enjoy. The dungeon will have a linear path you can follow to the end goal, but there's also side paths of which you can choose to go down or just instead go through the main route. This could lead to further treasures but also further dangers. As you move around and deal with encounters, the time will progress. Once enough time passes, new debuffs will be applied to the party. These are negative effects on your party, such as losing the ability to place your fighters at the start of the battle. If you linger too long in a dungeon, these debuffs can become quite debilitating, so it is wise to spend only the time you need before heading to the surface. I like the risk and reward of the dungeons, where you can push further and attempt to see the whole dungeon, potentially finding new treasures, or simply get what you came for and bugger off. Combat in the Iron Oath is turn-based on a hexagonal grid. Usually you're able to place your fighters in certain places at the beginning of each combat. This allows for some tactical decisions, especially as you can see where the baddies will start. Once placed, you can begin combat. Combatants take turns in initiative order, denoted by their speed stat. When it's a character's turn to activate, they can take a move action followed by a combat action. They can move up to a number of hexes denoted in light blue, with further hexes outlined in grey. If you option to move to the grey hexes, you will lose your combat action. An important factor to keep in mind during combat is that your characters can be reduced to 0 health and then start to bleed out. You must move quick to pick them up with your other characters or direct some kind of heal towards them. If you leave them be or they continue to take damage while in the state, they can die outright and obviously be lost to the party. This will sometimes happen and I tend to go with it rather than reload an old save, though sometimes I might. I enjoy the tactical depth of the game, with flanking and controlling zones and such, as well as flashy spells and animations. As it is a large part of the game, the fighting has to be good, and I think it has succeeded at that. Once a dungeon or an event is complete, you can go back to the town and receive your reward. Your party will gain renown, and when they have accumulated enough of it, they will advance in renown level and gain renown points to spend on all sorts of perks for your company. You can move on to more contracts as well as following the main story that will take you to towns and locations across the world. The Iron Oath is in several ways similar to Battle Brothers, in that you control a band of mercenaries and take jobs while fighting on hex grids, but they feel quite different. The dungeon system and more fantastical nature of the Iron Oath helps to set it apart from that game. This is a lot more focused on the story as well, with lots of dialogue and stories unwinding as you play. If you like Battle Brothers, then I think you will of course like this too, but they are both distinct games. I had good fun with this game. Even though I didn't know much about it before delving in, it didn't take me too long to grow fond of it. The combat is tactical and fun, managing your company with contracts and equipment and such is interesting, and the world feels alive with perils and treasure for you to discover. If you like tactical turn-based gaming, then I think you would most certainly enjoy this game. If perhaps pixel art isn't for you, or you aren't into the slower pace of turn-based fighting, then perhaps you may not enjoy it. If you haven't played anything similar before, I think it is definitely worth giving a go. And there we go, dear viewers. Another video done. I hope you enjoyed it, and I hope you're doing well wherever you are. And I shall see you next time.